What did fashion look like before flashing cameras, luxury runways, live streams, influencers, and celebrities dressed like walking pieces of art at the Met Gala? Most people assume fashion shows have existed forever, as if wealthy people throughout history always gathered under giant chandeliers while models walked dramatically in expensive clothing. But the truth is much stranger than that. For most of human history, fashion was never performed, never staged, and never treated like entertainment. Before the modern fashion industry became a machine powered by attention, status, and internet obsession, clothing existed mainly as a symbol of survival and social class. In medieval Europe, peasants wore rough wool and simple handmade garments meant to survive cold weather and physical labor, while nobles covered themselves in imported silks, embroidered velvet, jewels, lace, and expensive fur. Clothing quietly controlled society because one glance at a person's outfit immediately revealed whether they belonged to power or poverty. Fashion was not about creativity yet. It was about hierarchy, intimidation, and reminding ordinary people who ruled the world. Fashion trends back then moved painfully slowly compared to the speed of modern culture. There was no social media, no fashion magazines arriving instantly around the world, and definitely no celebrity outfit reveals exploding online within seconds. A wealthy woman in another country might wait months to hear about new Parisian styles, relying on handwritten letters, rough sketches, fabric samples, or traveling merchants carrying small pieces of luxury cloth across Europe. Sometimes customers had to imagine how a dress would look on a human body because the clothing itself remained lifeless and static during presentations. And that is the strange thing many people today never realize. For centuries, fashion had no movement, no drama, and no emotional spectacle attached to it. Dresses hung silently on mannequins while wealthy clients were expected to imagine how silk would flow while walking or how velvet would look under ballroom lighting. The entire luxury fashion industry still lacked one critical ingredient that modern brands understand perfectly today: fantasy. Then Europe changed. The 1800s brought industrialization, expanding railways, faster communication, rising luxury industries, and an entirely new obsession with modern identity. Wealthy families became desperate to appear fashionable because looking modern now symbolized intelligence, influence, and elite social relevance. Fashion slowly transformed from simple clothing into a weapon of status and psychological competition. Looking rich was important, but looking fashionable made people appear untouchable. And nowhere represented that obsession better than Paris. Paris was becoming the capital of elegance, beauty, perfume, luxury dining, fine art, and elite social culture all at once. The wealthy did not simply visit Paris to shop. They traveled there almost like pilgrims entering the center of sophistication itself. If you wanted to know what the future of luxury looked like in the 1800s, you looked toward Paris. By the middle of the 1800s, wealthy European women had become obsessed with exclusivity. They wanted dresses no one else owned, fabrics no ordinary person could afford, and styles that immediately separated them from the rest of society during royal gatherings and elite parties. Fashion quietly evolved into social warfare where appearance could influence marriage opportunities, political connections, reputation, and social power. A single dress could change how an entire room treated you. But despite all this luxury obsession, nobody had solved one major problem yet. How do you make people emotionally feel a dress before buying it? Sketches could not fully capture movement, mannequins could not create desire, and folded fabrics on tables could not sell fantasy. The fashion industry was unknowingly waiting for someone who understood that luxury becomes far more powerful when it feels alive. And then, from England, a man quietly entered Paris with an idea that would permanently reshape global fashion culture. He was not born into royalty, nor did he come from immense wealth or noble bloodlines. But he understood something terrifyingly powerful about rich people. They do not just buy clothing. They buy attention, exclusivity, fantasy, status, and the feeling of becoming unforgettable. The man who would eventually change fashion forever did not begin life surrounded by luxury, silk, or aristocrats. Charles Frederick Worth was born in England in 1825, far away from the glittering elite world he would later dominate. He came from relatively modest beginnings, growing up in a society where class divisions were brutal and opportunity often belonged to people born into wealth. Long before wealthy women competed to wear his creations, Worth was simply another ambitious young man trying to escape ordinary life. But even as a young man, Worth understood something most people around him did not. Wealthy society was built on appearances, and appearances could control power. The rich were not simply buying clothing because they needed it. They were buying identity, status, admiration, and social dominance. Fashion was becoming psychological, and Worth recognized that earlier than almost anyone else alive. Eventually, Worth moved to Paris, the city rapidly becoming the center of global luxury culture. To most people, Paris was beautiful. To Worth, Paris was opportunity. Every street, ballroom, boutique, and royal gathering revealed something important to him. Wealthy people desperately wanted to feel unique in a world where the elite constantly competed against one another socially. And that is where Worth became dangerous in the best possible way. He realized fashion was not really about fabric. Fashion was emotion, fantasy, power, exclusivity, seduction, aspiration, and social warfare disguised as elegance. A wealthy woman was not simply paying for a dress. She was paying for the feeling of entering a room and becoming impossible to ignore. Most tailors at the time behaved like skilled workers who quietly followed customer instructions. But Worth did something revolutionary. Instead of allowing wealthy clients to fully control the design process, he slowly positioned himself as the authority figure whose taste mattered more than theirs. In simple terms, he transformed fashion from "the customer is always right" into "trust the designer's vision." That single psychological shift changed fashion history forever. Before Worth, tailors were mostly anonymous craftsmen hidden behind expensive clothing. After Worth, the designer himself became important, almost celebrity-like. The rich no longer just wanted beautiful dresses. They wanted dresses created by Charles Frederick Worth specifically. And then Worth introduced another idea that feels completely normal today but was shocking at the time. He began placing labels and signatures inside his clothing creations, almost like an artist signing a painting. That meant a dress was no longer just a dress. It became a luxury product attached to identity, prestige, and brand recognition. This may sound ordinary now because modern society is built entirely around branding. Today, people proudly wear giant luxury logos on bags, shoes, watches, and clothing because the brand itself communicates status. But in the mid-1800s, Worth was helping invent that mindset in real time. He understood that people often desire exclusivity more than practicality. As Worth's influence grew, wealthy women across Europe became obsessed with his designs. Aristocrats, socialites, and even royalty wanted to wear clothing created by the man transforming Paris fashion culture into elite performance art. His salon became more than a business. It became a gateway into status itself. Then, in 1858, Charles Frederick Worth partnered with Otto Bobergh to establish Worth and Bobergh in Paris. To outsiders, it looked like another luxury fashion house opening in an already fashionable city. But quietly, something much bigger was happening inside those walls. Worth was preparing to transform clothing into spectacle, movement, theater, and emotional experience. And then he did something nobody had ever seen before. The room itself did not look like a modern runway. There were no giant LED screens, screaming photographers, celebrity interviews, or millions of people reacting online in real time. Instead, the atmosphere inside Worth and Bobergh felt controlled, intimate, and almost secretive. Wealthy women entered quietly, surrounded by chandeliers, mirrors, expensive perfume, polished wood, and the heavy silence of elite luxury. And then, instead of showing dresses on mannequins or folded tables, Charles Frederick Worth introduced something revolutionary for the time. Live women began wearing the clothing and walking slowly through the salon so clients could see the dresses in motion. Silk moved naturally beneath candlelight. Velvet shifted beautifully while walking. Lace suddenly looked alive instead of lifeless. To modern audiences, this sounds completely normal because fashion shows dominate social media today. But in the 1800s, this was shocking. Clothing had suddenly transformed into performance art. Fashion was no longer just something people bought. It became something people experienced emotionally. Worth understood something incredibly powerful about human psychology. People do not emotionally connect to objects the same way they connect to experiences. Seeing a dress folded on a table required imagination, but watching it move across a room created desire instantly. The clothing now carried emotion, elegance, fantasy, and even social aspiration all at once. And strangely enough, the entire modern fashion industry still follows this exact formula today. Runway models still walk slowly. Designers still create emotional spectacle. Fashion brands still rely on lighting, music, movement, exclusivity, and fantasy to make audiences feel desire. More than 160 years later, the system Charles Frederick Worth created still controls how luxury fashion sells itself to the world. But the deeper you look into Worth's presentations, the more they begin to resemble something surprisingly modern. The salon was exclusive. Access was limited. The wealthy attended partly to observe fashion and partly to observe one another. In many ways, the earliest fashion shows were not just about clothing. They were about social visibility. That is why many historians consider Charles Frederick Worth the father of haute couture and the inventor of the modern fashion show system. He transformed clothing into an emotional luxury experience designed specifically for elite attention and exclusivity. The dresses mattered, but the performance surrounding the dresses mattered even more. Fashion had officially become theater. And maybe that is why the comparison to the modern Met Gala feels so strange once you really think about it. Today, celebrities walk slowly before cameras while millions judge their outfits online. In 1858, aristocrats watched live models in silence while quietly judging elegance, status, wealth, and social power inside a private Paris salon. The technology changed, the audience expanded, but the psychological game stayed almost exactly the same. And perhaps the most fascinating part is this. Charles Frederick Worth probably never imagined he was building the foundation for a global cultural machine worth billions of dollars. He simply wanted wealthy clients to feel luxury more deeply. But by turning clothing into spectacle, movement, and emotional performance, he accidentally changed fashion history forever. The runway had been born.